Welcome. Today's event is how to make AR for iOS. So this is really, I wanted to do a beginner's course for anyone who just has interest in augmented reality, but definitely, they want to do it for real. So I think, there's a lot of ways to enter augmented reality, but the only way to really distribute it right now would be on a mobile platform like iPhone or Android or something like HoloLens. But again, there's only really 3 or 4 platforms that you could really get your product broadly to the entire world. So iOS is one of them, and I think it's super important to just know that it's going on and to just basically iOS is how I got started, so I want to pass that knowledge back. Cool. And so my name is Casey Pollock. Again, my company's name is Near Future Marketing, and the name of this meetup is AR Today. So I started the meetup about 2 years ago. It was an in-person meetup. Thanks to the pandemic, not thanks to, but as we're going through this pandemic, we decided to switch to a completely virtual environment, and that actually allows us to have up to 10,000 attendees now. So this is actually a better format overall, and we are going to continue this going forward because it's a lot easier than me showing up in person. Cool. And so just a quick explanation, if I could give you one sentence as to what augmented reality is. Scientifically speaking, it is overlaying digital content in the real world. So that means if you have a 3D model, if you have a 2D sketch, a cartoon character, you could overlay that character in the real world and you can walk up close to them or far away or left or right, and you really feel like they're part of that room. So that's what augmented reality means to me, is having something digital really feel like it's in the room and you can interact with it. And so if you don't know, I've created quite a few augmented reality apps. So this is a quick roster of some of mine, starting in that top left corner. My first one was The Big Sky Above Us in 2017. I don't mention this enough, but I definitely should. So this was actually the first ever augmented reality album in the world. And what I mean by that is you can Google it, you can type in augmented reality album. There are other people who have done something similar, obviously maybe even bigger groups, but they added an augmented reality feature to maybe their album cover, whereas this is literally an augmented reality app that has 40 different songs that I produced, and they're exclusively found inside of this app. So I created the world's first augmented reality album, and it's called The Big Sky Above Us. It's free, it's educational, and there's a huge update coming very soon. I mentioned that in the last meetup, still working on it, but that's coming soon. Other than that, I have a few more apps. There's Magic Fish AR, there's 1001 Butterflies, which came out recently, Puppyware Co., Augmented Reality UFO stickers, Cardboard Soldiers is coming soon, Hollow Garden is coming soon, and Home Whip is an app that I worked on with a client. And so now I've switched to a new format. The Big Sky Above Us, it was a very original, very creative app, but it took a lot of work. It's not something that I would describe as repeatable or easy to update. And so from that struggle of learning how to create my first app, I decided that, I would create a platform to create all of my future apps. That way I can really test out things and, as one person work in many different directions. And so I call that system AugmaOS, and that's the icon there at the bottom. But AugmaOS is a system that I created on top of ARKit, so it's completely native. It's written in Swift, if you know what that is. That's the language for Xcode. And just basically you use AugmaOS to create other apps, and it just has a lot of cool features that I've come up with. So it's essentially all the code I've ever created in one app, and from there I create other apps with that app. Let's continue. And so last meetup I did announce this. So this is The Big Sky Above Us. This is that augmented reality album I mentioned. And again, it's free in the App Store. But last meetup I also open sourced the original code. So that 2017 code, the stuff that I originally wrote to make this work, it was super unique. I kept it close and dear to my heart. But now, I've created AugmaOS. The Big Sky Above Us, for reference, was 800 lines of code, whereas AugmaOS is 8,000 lines of code, both written by me. So, for me at this point, I'm ready to finally release the secrets of The Big Sky Above Us. And so that is open source on GitHub, and I'm going to show you how to locate that on my website now, because that wasn't there the last time. So I have been working on my website. I'm going to turn this fan down just in case it's too loud here. Let's see. Perfect. All right. And so I always like to show off this chart here. This is a slide I made that just shows all of the augmented reality capable devices. And this just gives you the full spectrum of what can be done or what should be done with augmented reality, because I don't think a lot of people realize how widespread it already is and where it's going. So starting, you can't see my mouse, but starting from the very bottom in that red, we have what's called the pepper ghost effect. So if you've ever seen at like Coachella, where they have like Tupac or any of the Whitney Houston, anyone else who has passed away, but now they're still on tour, still doing performances, that's called the pepper ghost effect. I believe it's about 2, maybe 3, but I believe 200 years old. And essentially it's a projector hitting a special mirror that reflects in a way that it makes the person look like they're there. So for the audience, the people in the crowd, they're looking up and they see this person performing. And it doesn't really, but you can't interact with that in the way of, you can't touch it, you can't, it's the pepper ghost effect, it's the very basic augmented reality. From there, you can move on to the yellow, where we have our older phones. So this is anything I would say made before 2012. And this would basically, you have your text messaging and email, you have your QR codes and your image tracking, the very basic version of that, as you can see on the right. And then we have what's called 3 degrees of freedom tracking. So that means that you can look left, you can look right, you can look up, you can look down, but you can't move in and out. You can't move closer to that object. You can't move farther away. You can't shift to the left. You can't shift to the right. So that's kind of what you're seeing there, is that, they're holding it and you can turn it and it is tracking that image, but only by the image moving closer would that be closer. The camera can't detect that the image is there and move closer. And as we move up in this chart, I want to point out that each section will have the things below it. So in the green, we have our flagship phone. So this is anything made after 2012, I would say, especially, the most modern, most current phones. But definitely these abide by those worldwide supply constraints. So there's a lot of rare earth metals. There's a lot of rare, hard to get pieces, basically, that are in these flagship phones. And that's why they range, $1,000 and up. But there are some really cool features and sensors inside of these phones that aren't really present in a lot of these older phones. And that goes for that 6 degrees of freedom tracking as well. That means, again, so now we can look left, we can look right, up, down, in and out, but we can also move in and out, left and right. So you can see there with the iPad, as you move to the left or move to the right, the image does change substantially because it is using the sensors to track exactly where the device is positioned relative to that hologram. So those are 2 features. We also have that advanced graphics there. And we also have object recognition and then energy efficient machine learning. And so those 3 are really important. Advanced graphics, obviously, we want to have things looking as realistic as possible. So as we move forward, advanced graphics are only going to become more advanced. Object recognition is really cool. This allows us to basically remember what an object, a physical object, looks like and map an experience to that object. So an example would be, let's say your bedroom. You have an app that scans your bedroom, and let's say you put a virtual painting on the wall, and then you close the app, you go to sleep. Well, tomorrow you could open up that app again and use that object recognition to recognize your bedroom and therefore place that painting exactly where it was yesterday. So these are things that are already possible. It's really, doable. It sounds like science fiction, but it's all already here, and you can do it on your iPhone. And then from there, we have that energy efficient machine learning. This is what's really key to AR. And definitely, I think there's tons of potential when you fuse augmented reality with a custom machine learning model. I think the representation is kind of like this, because as that machine learning grows, the augmented reality grows as well. So there's so much you can do there just with the flagship phone. And that's kind of what today's session is focused on. But as we move into the future, we've all heard about it. Maybe you even have a pair. We have AR glasses. And so AR glasses, I think what's key for these devices is that they have eye tracking, voice recognition, hand recognition, a near eye display. They're fashionable and they are untethered. So there's many variations of these headsets, but there are not any right now, I would say, in my personal opinion, there aren't any that meet all of these criteria, that have the eye tracking and have the hand recognition and are fashionable. I think that's the biggest key. The easiest way I could describe it is that if your grandma wouldn't wear it, then it's not going to catch on. And so that's what I mean by fashionable, is it has to be a device that your grandma is willing to wear and have on her face and interact with, and not feel foolish for wearing. So I think the Apple Watch definitely accomplished that. I've seen many grandmas wearing an Apple Watch, so I'm really excited for the future of augmented reality. As you all know, I think it's worth mentioning that it's rumored that Apple's working on some AR glasses, but the hints, the signs are all there. In my personal opinion, I've believed it for the last 4 years, and I think now we're finally at that prime time where technology has met up, the worldwide supply constraints have met up, and overall the fashionable aspect is much more attainable now that chips and battery technology have improved over the last 4 years. So look out for those, but let's keep going. This is a movie that I thought was really worth mentioning. It's called Creative Control. It doesn't have a lot of great reviews out there, and most people probably have never heard of it. It's an Amazon exclusive, which I thought was interesting. So Amazon produced this movie, I believe in 2014. Don't quote me on that, but Creative Control, it's a very interesting movie. I will warn you, it's mostly in black and white, but I think that's for a reason. But it's like a modern film that's in black and white, and it's all about this guy who works at a marketing agency, and he gets to play with this first generation pair of augmented reality glasses. And a lot of weird stuff happens. It's not going to be a movie, I would say, for everyone, but if you want to get more of that vision of what the future could look like, especially when we have a device that can replace the cell phone, I think Creative Control presents a really, really unique perspective on the future of AR. And truth, I think it's rooted in that gritty reality that we already have without AR glasses, that humanity and people are weird and different, and I don't want to spoil anything, so check out the movie on Amazon. And so when we look at AR, I always like to show these 3 slides here because it just gives you a quick glimpse of what can be done, because people ask me like, hey, what is AR? What can you do with it? You can do everything. If you've ever seen anything, whatever you've seen in real life, whatever you've seen in a movie, it can be done with augmented and virtual reality. I think virtual and augmented reality are essentially like conjoined twins, just like AI. So if AR grows, VR grows. If VR grows, AR grows. You can't have one without the other. And so AR is definitely informative. You could imagine if you were at a museum, you could have that display pop up and give you all the information. If you were in the airport, you could have a map that's mapped to that airport. It's definitely powerful. So you can have a multiplayer experience. Again, it's built on top of a game engine, but we can also integrate machine learning models there. In that bottom left corner, you can see it's counting how many basketball shots this person makes or misses. But in addition, it's tracking trajectory, it's tracking body position. There's so much that can be done that before it was, again, things that you only saw in movies. I promise you, everything you've ever seen in a movie can be done with augmented reality. Essentially, that's what a movie is its after effects of augmented reality. So it's augmented reality done the old-fashioned way, but now we have these powerful devices that can do this in real time. And of course, it's going to lead to a paradigm shift. It already is, but again, you can imagine in the surgery room, it's definitely huge. In the classroom, it's going to make huge changes. And even at home, if you're just watching a sports game, it'd be great to take your, small TV and turn it into a 100-inch TV or a 1,000-inch TV. And again, that's something that's easily doable with AR, but was not possible with any other technology that we've had before this. So it's a game changer. And it's a game changer in every industry. When you look at what industries are affected by this, there's not a single industry that's not affected by this. AR is affecting healthcare, agriculture, construction, gaming, navigation, astronomy, the internet, the world. It's everywhere, and it's only going to continue to grow. So it's, again, thank you for joining this meetup today, because you are already very insightful, and you have the right mindset. You're thinking about the future, because for the people who don't know, people who aren't paying attention, this is going to hit them like a ton of bricks. It's going to look like magic. And there's some science behind it. You can do it too. I think that's what I'm trying to say, is anyone can do it, and anyone can blow your mind with this technology. So I have a few terms here that I felt like were important to note. Augmented reality, of course, we already described that, but again, it describes a user experience that adds 2D or 3D elements to a live view camera or live camera view, in a way that makes those elements appear to inhabit the real world. So again, I think that's the really big key, is that they need to appear to inhabit the real world. which means on top of just being there, they should react to the user. They should, if it's a person, you should be able to, or a pet or something, you can tap and pick it up. If it's a pot, maybe you can knock it over. If it's a jukebox, a radio, it should make music. And as you get closer, the music should get louder. As you get farther away, the music should get quieter. So that's what augmented reality is. Within ARKit or iOS, we have that AR frame. So this is, again, 60 frames per second. Every single frame of that live camera feed is being analyzed, and it's capturing that position information from the phone using that accelerometer and gyroscope. So an AR frame is literally a frame, like a picture frame, generated once or 60 times per second. And it has, on top of having a picture, it has that tracking data that can be compared and used to create a wonderful user experience. And then we have Euler Angles. This is essentially like the rotation. So you can think like that leaning in forward, turning right and left. And what would be the other way? I guess this way, and you get the idea. I'm not going to do all of that now, but those are the Euler Angles, is that it's the rotation. And then we have our world origin. This is the center of your 3D scene, or 0, 0, 0. So in a 3D world, you could think of like a graph that goes in all directions. So we have our X going up, and our Y going left and right. But in a 3D world, this needs to extend to the left and right, forward and backwards, up and down. And so that's where we have that blue arrow going up and down. That would be like our Z axis. The Y would be that yellow axis there, and the red would be the X axis. And so these are common in any 3D program, but they definitely apply to AR. Some additional terms worth noting: world space. This is the space inside of the application. So this is that digital world. Screen space. This is the space on your screen. So think the app where the buttons go. This is like a traditional app like Instagram or something like that. This is a overlay of buttons overlaid on that video frame, that world space. So you have your screen space on top of your world space, and you're using that screen space to interact with the world space. Then we have 3 degrees of freedom, or 3DOF tracking. That's, again, where you only have that rotation there. So if you look on that chart on the left, that diagram where we have those curvy rotational angles there, that's 3 degrees of freedom. And if you want to look at 6 degrees of freedom, that would be our entire diagram, where we have the rotational aspects, but we also have that movement for up and down and left and right. Great, and then some recommended links here that we're going to go over, so I'm going to hop straight into these. We have developer.apple.com/ARKit. This is like a hub for everything you would need to know as a beginner for working on AR for iPhone. And then we have our human interface guidelines, super important. Whether you're working on augmented reality or not, Apple creates these interface guidelines, human interface guidelines for all of their devices, whether it's an iPad, traditional app like, again, Instagram or Twitter or something, or if it's an augmented reality app, or if it's an Apple Watch app. There are these interface guidelines, these recommended do's and don'ts for creating something that is going to be used by humans, essentially. So those are 2 great links. Another one, I just created this today, but if you want some advice, if you just have like a question, maybe after this meetup, feel free to post it again here in our live session in the Q&A. But if it's after this live session, if you're watching the recording, feel free to email me, help@nearfuture.marketing, and I can give you some advice. I don't mind, it's free. And then one last thing I wanted to mention, if you didn't know, this is a meetup, as I mentioned in the beginning. So I do pay monthly for this meetup. So I definitely appreciate it if you go to my website and tap join the meetup and just join wherever you are. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley, Redwood City area anymore. You just join the meetup. You can be in any country and you can join. And we definitely appreciate any donations. Again, this is a free meetup, free training, free assets. So I appreciate any donations for sure. So that's the end of the presentation. Yep, let's see if I can close this here. Perfect. Great, and we have a few more attendees. Let's see if we have some questions before I hop into things. Tim, man, this is great. Will it be recording it? Yes. So private reply, Tim, even though everyone can see. Yes, Tim. This session is recorded and will be posted on the Meetup website. www.nearfuture.marketing/augmented reality today. I think that's the link, hopefully. If not, just go to my website and you'll see it. But there you go. Tim, and I can make that an announcement. Great. Any other questions? Dismiss. All right. So that covers the questions we have, but please keep the questions coming. Let's hop over to my website and then Apple's website, and we will get started all the way. So this is my website. Again, my business's name is Near Future Marketing. And for anything you need related to this meetup, you would just tap here, Augmented Reality Today. And so again, you can join the meetup here. You can donate here. And then down here, you can see this is today's event. So we have our virtual event, and I forgot to add the free assets button. So I will be adding that afterwards. And then of course, you can watch the recording of our last event here. Swag Shop is always in progress. And of course, you can see our photo gallery in our past meetups. So I'm always working on the website. So definitely check out that because I literally make small changes every day. Down here at the bottom, you can email me. You can check my App Store website, Twitter, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and we have a GitHub as well. So earlier I mentioned the big sky above us is open source. So again, today's lesson is for beginners. I'm going to just quickly show you how to use RealityKit and Reality Composer and to build a quick app with that. And then we'll hop over to ARKit, which is much more powerful and more focused on the code. And we will create an experience with that. But again, these are going to be basic experiences. They won't be, you won't be able to sell this in the App Store. I mean, maybe you can, but I wouldn't sell this in the App Store. But it's going to be a great app. But if you go here in the very top where it says the big sky above us, again, this is that first augmented reality album. I invented it. But if you scroll down to the bottom here, last meetup, I mentioned that we were going to open source it. And so I didn't have the links anywhere. Too easy to find. So GitHub version here, if you tap into there, you'll go to GitHub and you can download the source code for that. I would recommend it. Again, it's 800 lines of code. So I'm sure there's something useful in there that I'm not going to cover today. So check out that on GitHub. And then the concept art, I'm going to start adding this to all of my apps because that's the first step of creating any app. For me personally, I think you should always sketch it out first. You should always think about these ideas, draft out different names or whatever, but I always start with a sketch. So if you come to concept art now, it's going to be on all of my apps, but this is up and ready for the big sky above us. You can see here, this is the original sketch. This is from 2017. It was called Little Big Solar System. That didn't pan out, but definitely there's the original sketch. Here's some artwork that inspired me when I was programming it to add in these planetary tilts and realize that, hey, planets don't just spin perfectly on their equator. So there's lots of thought that goes into making an AR app. And as I start to branch out and teach more, I definitely want to leave breadcrumbs as to how I did it. So again, if you come to our products and you go to any of my apps, but starting right now, it's set up for the big sky above us, scroll to the very bottom and you can see that concept art there. So that's my website. Now let's get you set up with Apple. So to get started, this is really cool because when I started, you needed a developer account. You needed to pay for it to actually start working and test things. You don't need that anymore. So you probably need a developer account to download it or at least to set it up. But really, you just need to go to developer.apple.com. And here you can find everything you need to know about developing, whether that's for augmented reality or not. It's all the same. That's just the way Apple does it. It's all included in one platform. And so again, iOS 14 and all of these other things are coming up. So we're not going to focus on Xcode 12. This is beta. This is the next version. Instead, today we're going to use the current release version, Xcode 11. So we will cover that. But here, so I just wanted to point out that basically you should come here and start an account, but I already have an account, so I don't really have too much to show you here other than what it looks like once you get an account. But you don't need the account to start developing, so create your account, sign in with your Apple ID, and then let's go to developer.apple.com/ARKit. And so ARKit is the name of the primary technology, I would say, that powers augmented reality experiences on an iPhone or iPad. And so this is Apple's website. It has everything you need to know. It has really great artwork, really great documentation. And so here you can learn about, again, what's upcoming. We have ARKit 4, very powerful with that LiDAR scanner. Essentially, it's almost near perfect AR now. So definitely check out that, or grab that iPad. But what we want to do here is basically come down to the bottom where you can see SDKs and betas, documentation, session videos, and discussion forums. So forums, great place to ask questions. Session videos, this is like Apple's official AR, VR videos. And notice how they put AR and VR together. Again, they are like twins. One can't grow without the other. So I would highly recommend coming here. You may not understand everything they're talking about, and that's okay. I would just recommend just watching the videos, just taking 10, 25, 7 minutes out of your day and watching something technical, because they're the leaders in this industry. I would say they're definitely killing the game. They started this. I won't say they started it, but with ARKit, they made it more accessible than ever. They made it really, really fluid. So at this point, we're in 2020. ARKit came out in 2017. You have 3 years of really great videos, really great content, really great demo content. So definitely check that out there. Under documentation, this is where you can find that technical documents, the really boring stuff about how it all works and how you can set up stuff. So again, you may not understand it all, but I would always recommend trying and just reading it and just taking notes, definitely. But from here, you can learn everything you would really need to know about what is possible with what they're doing. So people tracking, face tracking, image tracking, object detection, excuse me. All of that stuff, again, it gets kind of boring. I wouldn't recommend hopping into here and reading everything. But definitely if you click on some of these, like this one, you can see that they have examples. You can come here and download working examples of a multiplayer app or other things. And again, Apple's doing a great job at creating this content and creating the documentation. I can say some companies like Google, they have created the technology, but their documentation isn't always the best, isn't always up to date. And that can be really frustrating because augmented reality is changing really, really fast right now. So again, this stuff gets technical and boring, but if you just want to try it, come here, download some demos, watch some videos. It's developer.apple.com/ARKit. And so the last one that we will click here, SDKs and betas. So if you want it to work with what's coming up versus what's out now, if you want to focus more so on September and later, which as a developer, I'd say if you're new to this, I wouldn't focus too much on what's next, because even once you release something that's for what's next, you have to wait for everyone to update. So if it's an app that's only for iOS 14, you have to wait for everyone to update to iOS 14. So there's great features already built in since iOS 12. I would say the target for me personally right now has been iOS 11.3 to iOS 13 and beyond, maintaining that compatibility. But as a newer developer, I would say, yeah, iOS 13 or later is what you should be working on. So if you wanted to do that, you do need a developer account. It's $100 a year. But with that developer account, you can come here and try out the beta versions of iOS and macOS, as well as Xcode beta, and any of these other apps that they have here, like Reality Converter and Reality Composer. So lots of technical stuff. You don't need any of that to get started. So let's focus on what you would need if you have no experience and you don't feel like reading any background documentation. You just want to make an AR app right now today. So we will quit the internet and open the App Store. So here we have our App Store for Mac. So again, you do need Mac to get started with ARKit. And maybe actually let's switch this around. Let's start with Reality Composer because you don't need a Mac. So if you don't have a MacBook, but you have an iPhone or an iPad, you can still get started. So let's focus on that before I focus on the things that require you to have a MacBook. So let's open QuickTime and just pop that over. Oh, I'm watching a video there. So let's quit this video and QuickTime. And we'll do a new, I believe it's movie recording. Let's see, yep. And then we can change this to Casey's iPhone. Perfecto. And I'm gonna close this closet here. It looks a little messy. Cool. So yeah, this is my iPhone. It's connected to my MacBook now. So let me show you how to get started with just basically Reality Composer. So in the App Store, you can type in Reality Composer, and you can see it's probably going to be the first most recommended app. And this is an app built by Apple to allow you to build an AR experience on your iPhone or iPad. So this is a game changer. It's really, really cool. Download it because, again, you don't need any experience. You don't even need a MacBook. You don't need a developer account. You just need an iPhone 6S or later. And once you've downloaded it, you can go ahead and open that app. And it's a really simple app to use. So let's go through how to use it. So in that top right corner, you can tap that plus bar and create a new project. And so when you create a project, we have what are called anchors. So this is where exactly will this experience be mapped to? Is it going to be mapped to a horizontal tabletop or maybe a vertical wall or maybe a specific image or logo? Or maybe you want it to be like a face filter, or maybe you want it to be mapped to a specific object like a guitar or a lamp that's special to you, or a museum piece. So again, this is stuff that would have taken already just a good amount of code, a good amount of experience, a good amount of understanding. But again, this session is for someone who doesn't have any of that. You just want to make something cool. So we're going to start with horizontal, the most basic. And this is essentially like plane tracking. So hopefully you can see me on the camera here on our live event. But if I move my finger, I slide it up or down, you can see that that allows me to rotate the camera around this object. And so if I tap that object to select it to edit, you can see now we have some arrows around it. So this is, again, our Z-axis, which on AR iPhone, it's kind of rotated. So the blue is normally what would be up and down for most 3D programs, but on our iPhone, it's forward. It's kind of like you're looking down at a scene, because that's what the technology is built on. But you don't care about that. So again, blue moves it in and out. Green will move it up and down. You can see we already have our shadow there. And then the red will move it left and right. And so with this, we can already adjust the position of our 3D object. I can also swipe in and scale it in or out. I could probably pinch to do that too, no? Okay, so pinch allows me to kind of pan the camera, basically. So if you want it to move the camera to a very specific spot, 2 fingers, and you can pan to move that to a specific spot. Cool, so that's our basic 3D object. If we tap the 3 dots in that top right corner, you can see here we get some options to interact with this object. So let's tap behaviors here, and let's add some behaviors to this object. So we'll tap the plus bar, and let's start with a basic tap and flip. I like this one. And so here we're creating a behavior for this object. So essentially what happens when I tap this object? So as the name implies, it's a tap and flip. But again, this is where you don't need any coding experience, and I can't stress how cool this is because I started with ARKit. You need a coding experience, and you know, I earned it. I worked on it. It was easy enough to learn. It was easier than anything that had came before it. But now we have sliders. So if you wanted that jump, that behavior to last a total of 10 seconds, we can swipe that out, but maybe let's drag it to 3 to keep it quick. We can change our motion from a flip to maybe a jiggle, and we can change the style from basic to maybe playful or wild. So let's do playful. We have a playful jiggle, and we can actually preview that. So let me pan this here. We can preview that by pressing the play button down there. And so you can see that's what it's going to do. When you tap it, it's going to jump and jiggle. And so let's bring this, remember I moved it up, so let's bring it back down to our plane. Perfect. And then let's tap the play button here. Let's go back. And so that's our behavior that we've mapped to this object. So if we tap our play button at the very, very top here, this is like a 3D scene. So this is really cool in that you don't need to go into AR every time to edit it. Whereas with ARKit, with traditionally, you know, to build an AR experience, you would have to compile it each time through that iPhone cord or wirelessly, but you'll have to compile the app, look at it and say, oh no, that's not what I wanted it to do. Stop it, redo it. With Reality Composer, we have that real time, that feedback loop where we can do something, hit the play button, tap our box, and it will do its little jiggle and go back down. And then we can stop the experience and say, wow, that's cool. That's kind of what I was doing. And so to see that in AR, we would just go back to that top right corner and tap that AR button. And you can see here pretty instantly, it tells us move your iPhone to start, and that's called the coaching view, just as a heads up. Now, let's see if I can get this menu here out of the way. You can see that we have our box here in augmented reality, and it actually, this is a glass table, so it ended up mapping the part that's under the glass. But I mean, that just shows you, again, you know, some of the things that can go wrong and kind of how this is thinking. So again, this is really cool. I can edit this still while I'm in AR, so I'm still editing the experience. So let's hit the play button now, and this is the actual experience. So this is what it looks like for me or you in real life. So if we tap that box, you can see it jumped above the glass and jiggled, and then it jumped back to its original position down there. So that's pretty cool. Tap it one more time to jiggle. And just again, really, really easy. We've created our first AR experience. No code, no experience. And it was really easy to do. So let's make this a little bit better. So let's turn off AR mode because it's a little bit easier to edit without AR mode, you know, without having to point at the table. And let's maybe add in some new objects. So if you wanted to add a new object, you would tap that plus in that top kind of middle area. And this is another reason why Reality Composer is super cool. It comes with a ton of 3D shapes. So 3D models, there's tons on the internet. You can find them all over. But to get what you really want sometimes can be expensive. And I think it's a great practice to have placeholders. So even if, you know, some of the things that you see here are not necessarily what you want it to use in your final experience, they have a broad amount of things that are all in the cloud, and you can just download them and use them. So let's say this cupcake here, you know, you tap it, give it a second, and it downloads. And so now we have our cupcake. We can move our box out of the way. Our box is still part of our scene, but here, let's say we want our cupcake to do something else. So let's add a behavior to our cupcake. So we'll tap, and let's do a proximity and jiggle. This one's super cool too. So we have our duration, we have our motion type here, sorry. And so instead of a jiggle, since we've already done that, let's do a spin. I like the spin. And then let's also change the style from basic to wild. And so let me show you what the style is doing. So if we're on wild and we do that, that's the wild style. We do playful, and play it again. You can see it's a little bit different. It didn't do the whole jump up and wildness. And if we do basic and play that one, play. Really calm, really cool collected spin. And so that was cool and quick, but let's maybe change that. I want that to spin for like 5 minutes. We can do that if we wanted to. So let's try that out. And let's look at what a basic spin looks like for 5 minutes. And maybe this time it didn't go. It's interesting. Oh, I see. I think that is actually telling us how long the behavior is going to go on for. So I don't normally use Reality Composer because it's targeted for beginners with no code experience. So bear with me here if I get some things slightly wrong, but yeah, let's try it this time. And so yeah, if you zoom in there, you can see that our cupcake is spinning, but it's spinning a little bit slower, and that's because duration means how long is this animation going to play, and therefore we can stretch it out, and you know, instead of a quick spin, it's going to be a longer, smooth spin. So I like the wild one. I like the 7 seconds. Cool. A little slow, but yeah, actually, let's make it a little bit faster. Perfect. All right, so we have some stuff going for us. Let's hit play here at the very top in AR here. So again, this time I'll try to scan this manila envelope there. Perfect. And let's hit play. And so again, you can see we have our proximity sensor, which basically means if I'm close enough, the cupcake will spin. And I think because it's spent already, it's not going to do it again. But again, this is just a really quick and basic experience. And again, you can see this 6 degrees of freedom tracking. So we can move in, we can move out, can move all around our cupcake. It really is in the real world. One thing that's worth pointing out is that Reality Composer or RealityKit automatically adds our shadow to our objects. So this is something that doesn't normally happen in ARKit by default. You have to write a little bit of code or do some edits. In RealityKit and Reality Composer, they're really focused on you not having to do too much. So again, we have our cupcake here. It already has a shadow. It already has a cool animation. We have our box over here. We tap it, it's going to do its jiggle, right? And if we go back, we can go back to editing that box. And instead of editing the behaviors, let's edit the appearance of this box. So if we wanted it to look like car paint, again, really easy to do. Maybe we want it to look like aluminum. Maybe we want it to look like bronze or gold. This is something that's really easy to do. If we want it to change the width here, we can change the slider for the width. We want it to change the depth, we can change that. Now we have this huge gold bar that already has reflections too. You can notice that it's actually reflecting my room. Let's make the height a little bit bigger. And again, this is something that you can add by code, but for RealityKit, Reality Composer, it's already built in. So this is kind of big now. It's too big for my iPhone cord, but you get the idea. It's really, really easy to, let's scale this down maybe. Let's see here. There we go. Perfect. I mean, you guys can obviously see how easily I'm editing this in real time. I didn't plan any of today's demos, probably should have, but I'm just that kind of guy where I believe in the technology and I believe in myself and I know I'm prepared enough. But this is really cool. You can see that it's reflecting my room, and essentially that's called cube mapping. It's an advanced technique that is done automatically because we're using RealityKit. We want it to change the material, we could change its like slipperiness, its roughness, to be more like concrete or ice or lead or plastic. And this just changes the ways that it interacts with the physics engine. So if it gets pushed around, maybe it looks like gold, but it can bounce like plastic or it could bounce like rubber here. You know, these are just different things that can happen. We can also change how gravity is affecting it. And then accessibility is always worth taking a look at. And this is so you can add descriptions of the scene. So for accessibility features for the hearing or seeing impaired, you could also add a label that describes this a little bit better. Let's go back here. We can also change the anchor of an object, and we can also change what type of objects it can interact with. So if we want it to interact with the plane, or we want it to do nothing, we can. But let's continue. The reason I started here, I think this is what's also throwing me off. I don't normally use it on iPhone, so it is throwing me off a little as to where the features are. But the reason we started here, so we'll go back here, and if we press and hold this, we can rename it, and let's just say our demo. Done, right? So I just finished our demo. It's here, but if I wanted to, I could continue this on my MacBook. I don't have to do this completely on the iPhone. And so I think that's where I want it to start, but I realized it'd be better to show you the iPhone. So let's hop over to the MacBook side now. So this part, you do need a MacBook for, but don't worry, if you do have a MacBook, then it's a great experience. And if you don't, there are some hacks to get around with a Windows computer and still create a Hackintosh of sort. Maybe I can create a video on that soon, but let's go ahead and open Xcode. So again, you would go to the App Store on your MacBook, type in Xcode, and this is Xcode. This is Apple's tool for developing and submitting apps. So if you ever plan on submitting something to the App Store, this is the only way to do it. So we would go ahead and tap open, and that's even if you're using Unity, even if you're using some other program. In the end, you have to compile and upload from Xcode. So, you know, if you have a Windows computer and you're like, oh, I do Unity, I'm sure I can still develop for iPhone. Unfortunately, you still would require that MacBook to finally compile and upload that. So this is Xcode, and once you're in Xcode, how do we get to Reality Composer? Hold the Option button here. You can't see it, it's on my keyboard, but hold Option and then right-click Xcode, and here you should see Open Developer Tool. And in our Open Developer Tools, we have a few options here. We have Instrument Simulator, blah, blah, blah. the one that's important for us is Reality Composer. This is the same app that we were using on our iPhone. So let's open that here. And it's going to ask you for the file. Where's that file that you were just working on? So it's stored in iCloud Drive if you're using iCloud. So we'll go to iCloud Drive, we'll go to Reality Composer, and look at that, it's our demo. So let's go ahead and open it here on our MacBook. So again, we created this completely on our iPhone, and now we're opening that .reality file in our MacBook. So give it a second. I think it's open. There we go. Yeah, it's just kind of downloading everything. Perfect. And so here we are, full screen Reality Composer, and you can see all of those properties transfer over. So we have our golden box. It's still gold. It still has the same measurements, still has the same physics features. So if we tap here for participates, this is what I was looking for. Now that it's participating in the physics, you can see that we have motion types. We have fixed or dynamic. We change it to dynamic. That's what's going to allow it to bump around and get pushed around and react. And that's where we want to change maybe the material to rubber. Yeah, let's do that because that's going to look really weird. So we'll do rubber. And for our collision shape, these are just kind of some default shapes. So when objects in 3D interact with each other, it's a lot of math. And so to simplify that math, rather than tracing an exact copy of that object, which may be, really high poly, really, let's say an example in a video game that may be an object that's 1 GB big, so we'd have to have a 1 GB big object to represent it in the physics engine as well. So collision shapes allow us to simplify the physics of that object and just basically say, hey, this is basically like a block, or hey, this is basically like a ball, or whatever shape, whatever fits it closely. You can do custom physics shape. I think automatic here will kind of trace that, but if it fits closer to a box, I would say, yeah, just use a box. Keep it simple for the user, especially, everyone has different devices that they're running these experiences on. So you want to make it the most compatible you can. So now that we've enabled physics, you'll notice that if I hit play, that box instantly drops to the ground. And so because my iPhone is still plugged up, I can hit edit on iOS here, and you can see Casey's iPhone is plugged up. So I would just tap there, and because Reality Composer is open on my iPhone, let me show you that because you can't see my iPhone anymore. New movie, and 3, 2, 1, Casey's iPhone. Give it a second here. Oh, there we go. So yeah, Casey's iPhone, and you can see because I had the app open, it's asking me, hey, Casey's MacBook Pro wants to connect. Do you accept? I do. So we accept. We give Casey's MacBook a second to push it over, I guess. Let's wait for that. Let's maybe hop back in. So it's waiting for approval still. All right, so let's try that one more time. And if not, we're just going to go ahead and run it because it is syncing via the cloud. So yeah, let's do that here and see if we have results. So I just synced just via the cloud version. We'll see if the physics transferred over. So if our test worked, then this block will instantly drop. And if it didn't, then it didn't work. But it fell instantly. So we know that our test worked. So that same file those edits that we made on our MacBook have now transferred over to our iPhone as well. And if we tap our box, it still jiggles. It's the same box, it just looks a lot different now. So that's a quick, brief intro to Reality Composer. Again, this is the best way to do it if you are a complete beginner with no experience. I definitely recommend Reality Composer first, just because you don't need any coding experience. You don't even need a MacBook. So hope you appreciate that. Today's session is 1 hour and 30 minutes long, so our normal sessions are 1 hour long, but I already knew, I didn't plan any of this, but I knew covering RealityKit, Reality Composer, and ARKit would take 1 hour and 30. It would not be just a 1 hour event. So again, thank you for hanging in there. Before we hop over to ARKit, which is our more formal version of AR, it's where you would need code to do everything. Before we hop over, I do want to take a look at the questions because it's just me moderating. So what's the minimum version of iOS required? That's a great question. So let's take a look before I just answer that. The minimum required for augmented reality would be iOS 11 specifically. The bare minimum I would recommend you building for is iOS 11.3. And the reason being is that iOS 11.3 has plane tracking. It has that ability to track vertical planes, like the walls. So that was a really core feature that was not in the original version of ARKit. And that's why I wouldn't recommend targeting just iOS 11. But iOS 11.3 and later are all going to be compatible with ARKit. So I hope that answers your question. And I don't think I need to go to Apple's website because I'm pretty sure that answers your question. iOS 11.3 is the minimum I would recommend. From there, iOS 13 and beyond is what I would recommend to take advantage of the most modern features like multiplayer and hand tracking and face tracking and all that cool stuff. So 11.3 to iOS 13 bare minimum. Let's get started here. So now that we've installed Xcode, again, you can't do this during this live stream. It's a huge app. It's 5 gigabytes big. So this is recorded. Don't stress about anything you're seeing here. Don't feel like I'm going too fast. It's going to be on YouTube by the end of the day, I promise. But let's open up Xcode and create our first project. So this is Xcode. As you can see, I have tons of projects. I'm always working on something new. So definitely check out my website, check out my apps. But this is Xcode 11, and all you need to do is create a new project. So we'll tap create a new Xcode project here and give it a second. And when you create a new Xcode project, you can create, again, for iOS, watchOS, tvOS, macOS, cross-platform. I have not done all of that yet. So I have mainly focused on iOS and watchOS. I've not used any of these other ones. So focusing on iOS here in that top left corner, we have a single view app, which is just basically a basic blank app with nothing in it. You can create a 3D game or 2D game, an augmented reality app, and all of these others that I'm not going to cover because obviously we want to create an augmented reality app. So we'll tap augmented reality app, we'll hit next. Of course, we want to give our product a name. So let's name this one AR Today Demo App. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Cool. Here under team, this is where you would type in, once you have that developer account and that license, you can basically sync that to your product so that they know it's yours and that's who should be running it and testing this project file. Organization name, that's the name of your company. Organization identifier, this is kind of like your domain. Essentially, you create a website on the Apple server for your app. And so this is just kind of a link. It's a part of your website, basically. Don't stress it. I would say just make it something very simple that it should automatically be created, basically. Language, Swift. This part is very important. There's 2 languages available in Xcode, Swift or Objective-C. Objective-C is the original iPhone language, so this is what was available 2012, 2014. But Swift is a newer language, and it's actually how I got started. I had no previous programming knowledge. I just wanted to get into it, and I joined in, I believe, Swift's 2nd year of existence. And so it made it really, really easy to learn. Basically, Swift is a modern language that was invented by Apple in the last 5 years to create Apple applications. So, it's really, really targeted. It's really easy to learn. It's targeted at being easy to learn, at being modern, easy to read, flexible. I really highly recommend it. It's honestly the only programming language I really know. I know some others, but it's the only one that I feel confident in, I'll say that. As for content technology here, you can change it from Scene Kit to Sprite Kit to Metal to RealityKit. So RealityKit is what we just used for that Reality Composer. This would make your app that you're building here compatible with all of that technology, but also have access to the code side of things. Scene Kit is what I'm going to recommend for today. Scene Kit is what the original ARKit is built on top of. So essentially, Apple has their own game engine. This week in the news, it was a big deal that Apple banned Epic Games from the App Store. And in addition to banning Fortnite, they also banned the Unreal Engine. And so it's actually kind of funny to me, as someone with more knowledge on the topics, is that Scene Kit, this game engine that's built into Xcode and the iPhone, is actually technically a competitor of Epic Games. It is a competitor of the Unreal Engine. So, you know, if you were working on the Unreal Engine and you can't build your app anymore because of the ban, hop over to Scene Kit. It's native. I definitely recommend it because it's, again, the one that I have the most knowledge of. Really easy to use, but basically this is their game engine, and they took this game engine and built ARKit on top of it. So, you know, there's a strong foundation there. There's lots of power available in Scene Kit, and that's what we're going to use today. Sprite Kit is their 2D game engine. So again, this is built by Apple. It's available for you, but you won't be able to do anything 3D here, only 2D AR. So not really up our alley today. And then Metal, this is for you complex super nerds who know everything about 3D. Metal is the core technology that underlies everything that's being done on the GPU, the graphic processing unit of your iPhone or iPad or MacBook. And so if you have Metal knowledge, which I have a very tiny amount of, I'm trying to grow it, but it's just very, very technical. This is for the people who already have a game engine. So let's say you built a game engine, you're a big company or something like that. You would basically probably want to use Metal so that you can build something that looks exactly like what you've already created. So we're not going to do Metal today, very complicated. Let's start with Scene Kit. Under user interface, I would not recommend making any changes here. I never have, and as you can see, there aren't even any options. Storyboard is the way, so let's hit next. Last thing you want to do is pick where your apps go, and so this is important because I have created a lot of apps, and I've also accidentally deleted things, and I've also broken things. I would recommend putting this in iCloud. If you're using iCloud, put it in iCloud. That way, if you're on the go, you can still look at that code, you know, on your iPhone. I really recommend that because as you get better with it, as you become more obsessed with augmented reality, you'll want to look at things on the go. You'll have new ideas. You'll have all of this stuff, and you want everything to be as accessible as possible. So I would recommend storing it inside of iCloud and just having a special folder where you keep all of those things. Today, since it's just a demo, I'm going to do it on the desktop. So we'll go ahead and create it here on our desktop. And cool, that is all you need to do. So let me close some applications here because I am doing a live stream right now, and I am running these applications that are going to get pretty crazy. So we're going to close these extra windows that I have open because I don't need them. I need all the RAM I can get. And there we go. So we'll quit that one, and anything else we can quit for now. Let's quit Safari just in case. We want all the RAM we can get. And I hate this thing, it won't go away, but it doesn't look like it's doing anything. Cool, so again, feel free to type your questions in the chat box. But next we're just gonna break down some of Xcode, and then we're gonna run our app. In fact, let's do that first. So at the very top left here, you see that play button? That's how we run our app. If we click here where it says AR Today Demo App, this is our project, and from there you can choose the target device. So right now it's selected for Casey's iPhone. You could also do any other devices you've plugged up to, like my girlfriend's iPad, which is not up to date, so we can't deploy there because our target right now is 13.6. Generic iOS device, you're only going to use this when you're uploading to the App Store. That's what I use when I upload to the App Store, so it's not a testing device, it's more so a filler device to just have something when you don't have something plugged up. And then these here, the iOS simulators, these are great. Unfortunately, you can't really use the simulator for augmented reality because it does need that live camera feed. You know, that's really the basis of AR, is that you're building something that you don't know who is going to use it. You don't know where they are. You know, they could be in a car, an airplane, they could be in their bedroom, they could be in the pitch black dark. And that's kind of the fun and the challenge of building augmented reality, is that you're building an experience that you don't control where it's going to be used. You don't control the environment, you just control how it reacts to the environment. So can't really use the simulator. You can use it to maybe test, look at the UI, the user interface, but you can't use it to actually test the app. You do need a real iPhone or iPad to test the device, to test the applications. So Casey's iPhone is selected here. Before we run it, I just want to bring up attention to this here. So this is the general menu of our project. So you can see there's a bunch of stuff to click, but if you click the blue project here at the top, We have general. And so display name, that's the name of our app. So maybe let's change it from AR Today demo app to just AR Today. Cool. And so that's what it's going to read on our iPhone. When it's on our screen on our iPhone, that's what it's going to say. Here you can see target. We have our devices, iPhone and iPad. No reason to drop support for iPad, so just leave it. But this is what I was talking about, is that instead of supporting just the newest version of iOS, we can bump this back to maybe iOS 11.3, and we're still compatible with augmented reality. So, you know, some features are not available in iOS 11. It's up to you to figure out which ones are and are not. But definitely, I would not recommend only targeting the newest version, because let's be honest, most of our friends do not update their phones every day. So definitely, you know, the farther back you can go, the better. I would say, as a developer with quite a few apps in the App Store, I've noticed that you get more downloads when more people can download your stuff. So let's bump it back for now, iOS 13, just to keep things consistent. But I would always recommend bumping it back to like iOS 11.3 or at least 12. 12, I would say, is a solid place to be. Device orientation here, we have portrait, upside down, landscape left and right. This is just how the scene can display itself when you turn the phone around. We're going to leave that. So let's hit run here in the very top left. We'll go ahead and tap that play button, and this is going to build our app. So while that builds our app, I will check, and I didn't ever actually, so iOS 11.3 is the minimum I would recommend. And I think I spelled recommend wrong, but there you go. Great. And so the app has popped up on my phone. So let me show you my phone. And please keep the questions coming. We haven't had too many questions, which is actually great for me, because I can only do so many things at the same time. But I want more questions always. So go ahead and ask away. So new movie recording. And I wish this would just stick to my phone every time. I should probably stop closing it. There we go. All right. And so let me go back here. All right. So I'm going to delete the app because I took too long to kind of acknowledge it. I want you to get that core experience. All right. So again, here we are in Xcode. We're going to tap play. Build succeeded. That means it works. So that means everything's working. And if we hop over to my iPhone screen, you'll see it says AR Today, the name that we gave our app, would like to access the camera. Don't allow or OK. So this is something that the app has to ask the user. This is Apple's requirements. They have very strict privacy requirements. And it's really for the best, I would say, as a developer. But basically, they have to hit OK. So it's great to add a great message here to explain why they need the camera, why you need the camera access. But I would not stretch this message and make it be super long. Don't make it a paragraph. So OK here. And now that we've hit OK, you can see we have our live camera feed here. And if we look around, we have our first AR object. So let me close my MacBook there. And you can see there's a jet here. And this is our stock object that we get with Xcode. This is what we get with our starter project that we created. So that's some cool Inception type of effect. But this is great. You've already created your first AR app. So let's go ahead and stop it here back in Xcode. So we're going to go ahead and stop that. And let's make some changes to this app. So how do we do that? There's so many buttons here. Well, I can tell you to start off, you want to make sure you're in the project, but it's not going to be at this top level. It's actually going to be here in this folder. So this is our app essentially. App delegate, don't worry about it. I could explain it, but I'd rather not. Essentially, this is what's going on in the background to manage some parts of your app. I don't think I've ever really made any changes to this in any of my apps that are released in the App Store. With all 8,000 lines of code I've written, I have not really touched the app delegate too much. So don't worry about that. In our art.scn assets folder, this is where all of our 3D objects are stored. So let's take a look. So in here, we have our ship.scn or scene. And this is our 3D object. And my mouse, there we go, is here now. And so if we tap and click and just kind of pan around it, you can see that I can look up and around our jet. And if I pinch, I can zoom in. If I use 2 fingers, I can pan around. So it's really easy to take a look at our object and look at it before we work on it and before we look at it in our actual app. We can also see animations here. So if we tap play here, if this one had any animations, we would be able to see those animations. On the top right, or let's start on the left side. So on the left side, we have our scene graph. This is everything that's in our scene. And what I mean by that is, here's our ship.scn, which is represented by this. And our ship has a mesh, which is essentially the 3D object. And it's a little confusing how they structured this. And then that mesh has an emitter, which is shooting out particles. It's shooting out like a jet stream. So we'll take a look at that the next time I run the app. But basically, this is the structure of our objects. And so just to give you an example, if I wanted to add something to this scene, you could tap that plus mark here. And maybe let's just add a Omni light, which you don't need an ARKit. There's some automatic lighting that we can handle. But basically, you can see now there's a light, and it's, our object is reflecting some of that light, and we can move that light and adjust it over here and stuff like that. There's lots of things you could change about your scene. But you can see now in our graph, if I didn't have any idea where that light was, I could quickly find it in our graph. So I'm going to delete it here with the delete button. But that's just quickly how to do our graph. If we, on the right side, starting from the very left, we have our inspector, our file inspector. And so this is just a inspector of our file, essentially. So if I wanted to rename this from ship to jet, I could do that here pretty easily, but I'm not going to do that. I would break some code. History inspector just shows us the history of this object. I never really used that. Quick help, never really use it either. Yeah, don't really use that one. Identity here. So this one, the node inspector, this is how we make changes to the actual 3D object. So the shape of it, the geometry. So if I wanted to change the position, I could change the position to maybe 0, 0, 0. And now you can see it's at our world origin, or 0, 0, 0. And then if we click it again, you can see now that it's highlighted, we can make some more changes to it. So that was the position. For Euler angles, we could change here with these bars, these curvy bars. Let's do this one. And you can see our Y value under Euler on the right side is changing. It's negative on this side, and it's positive on this side. So that's just quickly how we could rotate our jet. Let's leave it rotated. And then we have our scale. So if we wanted to change it and maybe make it, skinnier, we could do that. And now look at that. Now we have this skinny jet that looks like it probably goes really, really fast. And let's leave that because, this is ours. This is our demo. So let's leave those changes. Opacity is kind of just how see-through is the object. So if we change that to 0.3, you can see it's pretty see-through now. It's like an invisible jet. So let's bump that back up to 1 and keep it solid. Cast shadow, this is important. We talked about this earlier, so you want that checked if you want shadows. But you can also maybe save some processing power if you don't use shadows. So that's key. Rendering order, this is more of an advanced technique. Same thing with the category bitmask. So don't worry about this menu here. Really, you just need to worry about these things here. Coming back to the top, we have our attributes inspector. And so here, this is the actual geometry. And this is like the name of this object. So if you ever wanted to maybe, change this, again, this is something I really wouldn't recommend touching too much. Last but not least, definitely most important in my opinion, we have our material inspector. And so this is how we make our objects look the way they look. So let's remove our material super quick. So we'll change it to white. And now you can see that we have our jet. We still have the shape of it, but it doesn't have the colors. All the colors are gone. We don't have that anymore. We have the shininess and all of that because that's based here in the material. So you can see under metallic, we can change this to be maybe 0. And now it's not metallic at all. It's just an object with some reflection, if any. So let's change that back to metallic. We have our roughness, which just kind of determines how rough the object kind of looks. And we have all of these other values. Again, we don't have too much time here today, so I won't cover all of these. But definitely, this is how you would make material changes. So play with these in your own time. The most important, however, is the diffuse. So this is essentially the skin. This is the base skin of that object. So if we wanted it to be a red jet, make it red. If we wanted it to be a black jet, we make it black. And if we want to set it to a custom image or texture, we can set it to a custom image or texture, which is here. And again, that texture is stored on our left side. It's stored in our art.scn assets folder, in the same folder as our 3D model. So now that we've remapped it to the diffuse texture here, it looks really good. We can also change the shading style here. So physically based basically means making it look realistic. Constant, however, means unrealistic. It's just like a cartoon. It's just very flat. Lambert, kind of similar, same thing, which turns the blend. Fong, yeah, basically it's either looking really realistic or it's one of these older techniques that don't look quite as realistic, but they have some other qualities that allow you to change the look. But let's stick with physically based because it's shiny and cool looking. Dope. So that's our art folder. That's where we put our 3D objects. And really quickly, while I have the time, I think today's session is more so about best practices. We're going to have another session soon that goes into a more technical demo. But let's go to cgtrader.com. Again, I fully recommend this website. It's where I spend way too much money. But basically, you can buy 3D models here, and you can also get tons of cool free 3D models. So let's search for something. Let's say a dog. That's the first thing that came to mind for me. So we'll Google or search dog, and then here at the top, we'll type free. And then under formats, let's change it to .obj. So ARKit or SceneKit supports a few formats. One of the good ones for things that don't have animations would be a .obj file. So this dog here, wow, he looks pretty complex. Let's find one that's a little bit nicer, lower. Yeah, let's do this one. So yeah, this one's a little bit lower poly, and it still has a texture. It's pretty big. The reason I'm kind of scared to download this is because I'm doing a live stream at the same time. But what the heck? I lag out a little bit here, guys. You all know why. So we're going to download that, and then I'm going to show you how to import it into our app so that you're not just stuck with the things that they gave us, but we actually have something cool and new. And I'll put this in our free assets folder later. So after this meetup, I would say a few hours after, by the end of the day, all of the free assets, this demo project, the slides are already there, will all be there. So we're going to download this rar file, .rar. We'll put it on our desktop again. And so we'll just save that. So again, I do apologize if I start lagging here on the live stream. We have 13 more minutes. I feel like it's not enough time, so I'm going to check the questions while that downloads. New questions. Can you still develop with ARKit if you only have Windows systems? So to answer that one, yes, but you would need to create what's called a Hackintosh. Google or search for a tutorial on YouTube. Great. And maybe I'll put in parentheses, installing Xcode Hackintosh. So I would definitely recommend getting a MacBook because again, this stuff changes so quick and so much that, keeping up with a Windows-based computer, it works, but if there's a bug, there's a bug. You kind of have to expect these things. So let me publish this. Publish, and then I will respond to it here, paste, so that everyone can see that one. Cool. But yes, you can do it with Windows. It's just called a Hackintosh, and we just definitely don't have enough time to cover that. So Google or YouTube video that one. I believe Mashiba has downloaded it here. So let's extract them. So it was a compressed file. We're going to extract it to our desktop. Give it a second. There it is. And so in here we have our Shiba Inu .obj file. And so the reason I chose OBJ is because OBJ is a file that is great for anything that doesn't have animations. If it's a coffee cup, .obj is great because you can drag and drop it directly into Xcode. So, oh wow, he's really fancy. So let's drag him in right above our ship there. And so now you can see we have our Shiva here, and he doesn't have any textures yet, but he looks cute already. He looks pretty cute already. And there's all these cute squares around him, whatever those are, probably some particles. So the reason I'm doing this is because I wanted to show you how to, one, bring this in. It was really easy. We dragged and dropped it, but now how to convert it and make it more efficient. So you click this object, and at the top you hit editor and convert to SceneKit file format or .scn. That's the same format as our ship. And what this does is it converts this object into Apple's format. And by doing this, the file actually becomes 30% smaller. So if it was 60 megabytes, it's now probably only 40 megabytes. And if you don't believe me, let's look at the original file here. So here's the original file. It was, wow, 1.3 megabytes, so it must all be textures. And here's the new .scn file. So if we right click this and show it in our Finder, here it is, .scn, yeah. And if we get info, this one is 758 kilobytes. So literally it's 50% smaller actually. But you know, I think you guys understand what that means, is that if you create something, and it's probably lagging me a little here with iCloud backing this stuff up. If we, if you have a 3D model and it's super high poly, we're trying to get this to an iPhone. That is the end goal. So definitely you want things to be as small as possible without losing quality. So convert everything to a .scn object and then delete the original OBJ from your project. So great, we have our LP Shiba Inu, and again, we're going to rename it maybe to just Shiba because that's a lot easier to type in our code. Perfect. That's our Shiba there. Let's add in our textures super quick. And again, I'm going to rush through this because we don't have too much time unless you guys don't mind sticking. Wow, there's a lot of texture. So this was the wrong one to do. But I'll just add it in. Oh, it's snow. I see now. All right. So again, I'm just really quickly dragging and dropping all of our textures in that came with our dog here. And so now that I have our textures, we'll click the dog here, and we'll click our material button here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And so under diffuse, oh yeah, this one's a little complicated. We won't have time to do this properly. So under diffuse, we just want to do Shiba Inu diffuse here, .png. And you can see now he has his color, so that looks really good. Under scarf here, we click the scarf, and you can see it loaded this one for render, Lambert 50S. It's just telling us it's a technical name. Sometimes if you buy stuff, it's named nicely. Other times they're not. So we'll put the scarf diffuse there, and really easy to see that we have our diffuse textures. Here it's probably snow. So let's do our snow base color. And yep, that was the snow. And I think that's good enough for our quick live demo here. So let's leave that. That's all of our art. So again, that's in this folder, our art folder, .scn assets. So really quickly, if that was too fast for you, it's on YouTube, so you can rewind, but that's how we add our assets. Now let's hop over to the nitty gritty code. So this is our Viewcontroller.swift. This is that language, that Swift language that I talked about earlier, that Apple invented. This is the file that holds all of your code. So if you want to separate it into more files, you can. Me personally, I taught myself how to program, so I prefer to do all of the code on one page. So starting from the very top here, we have this stuff here is just like comments that's generated automatically. So you can see it was created by me on today, and the copyright goes to the company that we listed as the organization. Here we have import UIKit, import SceneKit, import ARKit. These are the core technologies of our AR app. And so we need these frameworks in order to type in the rest of our code. This is what hosts the very base code that we need. It basically saves us millions of lines of code. And so here, under our Viewcontroller class, this is essentially the app. So the Viewcontroller is the view. It's what you are seeing in the app. And this is everything that's being controlled. This is everything that's, these are all the instructions. And so we have our scene view. This is our 3D scene. under view did load, this is what happens when the app finally loads. And so you can see, even if you don't understand programming, I'm sure you see this one where it says create a new scene, and it says let scene equals scene scene art.scene assets / ships.scene. If you remember, in our art folder, our ship is called ship.scene.scn. So that's what we're doing here. So we'll leave that, and then we're going to add our dog to the scene. And so this is, again, all comes with the stock version. This is what Apple provided for us. So we're just going to leave that here because we don't have too much time, and I want you guys to just focus more so on knowing where everything is and how it works together. Under let configuration equal AR tracking configuration, this is a view will appear. So this is what happens when the app is loading. If you hold the option button, you hover over anything, you should see this question mark, which will basically give you more information as to what that piece of code is. So we hold this and click AR world tracking configuration. You can see we have a summary here. It tells us exactly what an AR world tracking configuration is. And if we click here or click here and open developer documentation, we can actually get more info about this specific item and some of the things that are related to it. So you can see configurations. There's the world tracking configuration, which allows us to track the position and rotation, but there's also a body tracking orientation. There's a image tracking, there's face tracking, object scanning, so much. So take the time to learn about these things. Just take the time to read and just to study yourself. And I promise you, you can learn so much. You don't need to know everything. You just need to have the attention span to try. From there, we have our view will disappear here. This is what happens when the app closes. And then we have our scene delegate. These are just some of the things that are working in the background automatically to help the session run. All right, so yeah, I should have planned this out a little bit better. I do have to apologize for that part because for me personally, I wanted to squeeze in a lot of features into this demo, and it's becoming apparent to me now that I can go overtime, but I don't think I'm going to have every feature I wanted to squeeze in today. So let's go ahead and hop over to our storyboard over here on the far left. And this is where you would create your app. This is where you would design your app. So earlier we ran our app and you might have noticed that it had some debug text on it. Let's actually run it again so you guys can see it while I describe it. So let's unlock my phone. And so while that runs in the background, this is basically how we organize that app. And so here's our AR app again. And so I just ran it. And so you can see now we have our skinnier jet, super cool. You can go right through it. But you know, all the changes that we made stuck. They're here now. But you'll notice at the bottom there's some white space, and that's not really pretty. And we also have that debug text that says 60 frames per second. That's not something we would ship on a release app. So how do we change that? So swiping back over to Xcode, in our storyboard, you want to expand this Viewcontroller.scene and Viewcontroller and view. And until you finally find this thing called the scene view. So again, remember our scene view, this is our AR SCN view. That is a augmented reality scene view. It's an augmented reality game engine that automatically includes that live camera feed. And so you can see, we can move that around, we can stretch it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same shape as the screen that you're using, but you obviously want that because you want the user to feel immersed. You want it to feel like, hey, this is just a window into the rest of reality. This is just a sliver of what I'm supposed to be seeing, you know, if I had on AR glasses. So let's make this full screen. So we'll tap scene view here, and then at the very top, hover here, and it might be, there we go. You'll click editor, and we will go to resolve auto layout issues, and we will clear constraints. And what that does is it makes it so that this is not automatically going to be any size that you put it on. It's not going to automatically adjust for any device. So let's fix that because that's what we want. We don't want to take the time to work on every device. So this is our scene view. What we want is we don't want this white space here. So we'll just drag it down. And at the top, make sure that it's dragged all the way up. And the left and right are great. So now that that's done, we'll click our scene view again. And on the bottom right corner here, we will click this one for align. You see there, these two bars, these two rectangles. And here we can set our scene view to be aligned horizontally, so it's perfectly in the center, and vertically, so it's perfectly in the middle. And so once we've done that, we'll add two constraints. And it looks red right now. That's because there's some errors with our layout, but it is perfectly aligned, as you can see. So we come back to the right of those two bars. We have this icon here for new constraints. We'll tap that, and we will tap the bar here. We want all of these to stay 0. So we'll tap the bar, the bar, the bar. And this just makes sure that our scene view sticks to 0. It sticks to the absolute edge in every direction. So that works for me. We will add our 4 constraints. And now you can see that red disappeared and it turned to a blue, meaning that everything is A-OK. So this is going to be a full screen app now. Before we run it, I want to hop over again into where at the top. So again, our view did load, this function here. So if you've never coded before, that's probably a little confusing. So these brackets separate code. So between this bracket and this bracket, this is, think of it as like if I pushed a button, this is what would happen. So view did load, that's the button, and these instructions are what would happen. Similar to here, view will appear. You know, if I pushed a button, this would happen, and same thing here, view will disappear. If I pushed a button, if I close the app, this is what happens. So going back up to the top here, we had this show statistics here, and you can see we have some comments here. It says it shows the FPS and timing information. This is by default from Apple. We don't want that, so we'll just tap // it's like a // and that will comment it out, meaning these instructions will not run. They're no longer a part of our app. They're no longer taking space up in our app, and they won't happen. And so that's great. I would recommend commenting this out because, you know, maybe you want to bring it back later and you won't remember the exact code. So that's how you can comment that out. If we wanted to maybe change our scene from our ship to our dog, we could just change this code here and change it from let scene equals SEN scene to, you know, the ship. Now it's going to say the Shiba.scn. So again, he's in our folder and he's in the right place. He looks pretty cute. So let's go ahead and run our app now. So again, it's art.scn assets / Shiba.scn. So if you don't have that art.scn part there, it won't work because we need the full path of that object. So let's run our app again. And this time things should be pretty different. So give it a second and drum roll. Back up some. Oh yeah, this one's super huge. But I think you guys get the idea is that we have that dog here and he's just way too big. So we can go back into our scene kit editor and make him smaller. So let's stop the app here. And we will go to our our Shiba here. Wow, I'm a little hungry. All right, so here I'm going a little fast because I want to wrap up now that it's 1:32. We're a little over already. Let's do 0.4 here, 0.4 here, and 0.4 here. So we're literally making him 40% the size. Actually, let's do 0.2 just to be sure he's cute and cuddly. All right, let's run the app one more time. Build succeeded. And there we go. It's a lot more manageable this time. Still pretty big, but you can see that we have replaced our 3D ship with this dog. So again, this is a very, very basic intro to ARKit, but at least now you know where to put stuff, you know how to edit the code and what some of the code does, and you have a very basic understanding of how to learn more. So I do want to say that for right now's demo, I think I can go a little bit longer, but for anyone who only signed up for the first hour and a half, because that is a good amount of time, feel free to drop off. I'm not offended if you hop off here. I do really appreciate you for joining us, but thank you for joining today's demo. Before I continue, so again, I'm going to keep going. I'll add a little bit more code, but I do want to kind of wrap it up, at least for the people who didn't plan on being here for 2 hours. So back on my website, again, please check out all of my apps. I have a bunch of apps in the App Store. If you want to know more about working with me, maybe you have an app idea, but you don't feel like you're a great developer or programmer in the next, 5 years or 6 months or something like that, hit me up. I do work freelance. I do have my own stuff that I create for the purpose of creating, working with other people, and I have worked with other people in the past. So, on my website, you can book a free consultation. Why not do it? Or just, email that help@nearfuture.marketing. That's pretty cool. Augmented reality today, again, I do appreciate anyone joining the meetup. That's the best way to get updates about the next meetup. I'm trying to do these every week or two. So hang in there. We should have another event in about 2 weeks here, maybe sooner. But of course, I'm only one person, so I have to plan accordingly. Do appreciate donations, so check that donate button out. The free assets, the slides, everything will be posted here with a free assets button, and the recording will be posted here as well. And yeah, that's basically it. So, again, I do appreciate you guys for joining. From here, feel free to hop off. I'm just going to go a little bit longer because I didn't really do any custom code on this project yet, and as a programmer, that bothers me. So let's continue on our demo here. And so now we have our dog in our scene. He's still pretty big. So let's go back to our dog. And we'll make him to 0.1 or 0.09. Let's do that. 0.7. 7's a good number. Perfect number. So we will put 0.07, 0.07, 0.07. If I want to zoom in on this dog because it's so far away now that it's gotten a lot smaller, I can just right click anywhere and click focus selection. And that will just kind of focus it and bring it back to, a scale that I can actually work on. So our dog's here, he's still happy. If we go back into our Viewcontroller.swift where we can type in our code, let's write some actual code now. Let's write something custom. So again, I mentioned earlier that, code is like you'll have functions, you'll have spots where, it's basically if I pushed a button, what would happen when I push that button? So let's create one of those scenarios, on our own without what Apple has already provided. So let's do func. You'll type in FUNC for function. And I think there's a way I can zoom in here. Should have did this in the beginning. So func here, and then we can type draw text. And it's always a good idea to do what's called camel casing, which basically means that when you write draw text, you would start with a lowercase, and then the next word, you would start with a capital, like a text. So we'll do func draw text here. And then after that, you want these two parentheses, which just basically initializes it. It basically says, hey, this is a thing. This is something that's real. It's active from the moment the app turns on. So you need those. And then once you have that, again, all of your instructions, all of your code will go in these brackets here. So let's write some code. So for draw text, let's say, we have our dog. Let's say we want to wrap things up here because we've already gone over on our live demos. So let's just write, let's have a message that pops up that says, thank you, or AR today, or something like that. How would we do that? So let's first start with our text. We know what we want to say maybe. So let's say let text equals, and we know we want it to be 3D text. So what would that be called? It's called SCN text. So you would type SCN and then text, and then you would type a parentheses, and this will give you all the options you have to do that, to use with that one. You want to come down to the bottom where it says string, any extrusion def, all that stuff, and tap tab. And so once you tap tab, it will auto-complete and just fill out the rest of the code for you. And here where it says string any, this is where we type our actual text. So if you're not familiar with code and the coding language phrases, string basically means text. It means like plain old-fashioned text. And so in here, let's just go with thank you. Let's just go with AR today. I think that's a little bit more formalized there. Cool. And then for extrusion depth, this is how thick, how deep do we want these texts to be. I'm not too sure on how well this one, what the measurement should be here, so we'll just go with 1. So that's our 3D text, but how do we get this into our 3D world? Let's do some more coding. So we would say let, and again, let is creating a constant, and var is creating a variable. This is something that can be changed. So our 3D text is not going to change. Once it's created, it's a 3D object, and we just need to put it places. So I use let. So this time, let's use var, and let's use text node, we'll call it, equals scn node. Cool. And so an scn node is essentially the code representation. It is a 3D object. So you don't need any shapes, you don't need any colors, it's not even visible. It's just literally like the spirit of a 3D object. And so, yeah, that's the best explanation, because next what we're going to do is attach a body to that spirit. How do we, we have our spirit, we can say, hey, spirit, go to the 3D world and be there, but nobody can see our spirit. So how do we give it a representation that we can physically see, touch, and interact with? So next, now that we've named these two objects, you can now type in text node, and the Xcode will know what you're talking about. So text node dot geometry, because that's going to be the shape of our spirit. Again, it's like a body that's attached to that spirit, equals, and we want to do text, and that's because that's the name of our text. So let's actually change this from text to text geometry, right? Because we want it to be very clear as to how we got this together. And now you can see that created an error because I renamed text. So now it has to be text geometry. So that works. So now our text node, that spirit, has the shape of our text, which is creating a shape that will be based on AR today at a depth of 1. So we're almost there. The next thing we want to do, remember our 3D scene is called a scene view or an AR scene view. So if we type in scene view, which let me just scroll up here, that was established here. You can see var scene view, and it's mapped to the actual scene view that's built in by Apple. So scene view dot scene dot root node. Again, the root node is that's that spirit. So this is the absolute parent of all of the parents. This is the spirit of the entire world, essentially. Dot add child node. So we're going to add a spirit to the spirit. We're going to add a child. And what node are we going to add? We're going to add our text node. And that's really all you need to do to add some text to the world. So let's go ahead and run our app, because I could make this more complicated. I could make it take in custom text and stuff, but we already ran over by 12 or so minutes. So let's wrap it up here. I think the next section will be more focused on a technical demo. We're going to be more focused on writing, a lot of code and stuff like this. But I think for this section, we also covered RealityKit. We also covered Reality Composer, and that just ate a lot of the time that we needed. But again, this is the course for beginners, so I think it actually was better that I did that versus covering a bunch of boring code. So here's the code, not too complicated. But we do need to call that code. So again, this is a button, but it's not being pushed anywhere. So let's just add it. We don't need to do anything complicated. Let's add it right after we create our scene here. So again, remember our scene is equal to our Shiba. And under that, we're just going to type in draw. And what do you know? It's auto-completing because it knows what I'm talking about. So draw text. So now when we run this app, what we expect to see is we should see our Shiba, our dog, but we should also see the words AR today with an exclamation point marked at exactly 0, 0, 0. We didn't give this object a position, so just to give you a better understanding of a position, let's do that here. Text node dot position equals scn vector 3, right? And we could do anything. There's lots of things here. So when you type that parentheses, it gives you the different options you can do. Like a double is a number that's like 0.1 or 0.2, whereas an int would be solid whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's just do that for now, and we'll do 0, 0, 0. So we're going to make sure that it's at our world origin, but by default, it will always be at the world origin. But that's all we need to do. We have our button here, our function called draw text. It creates some text geometry based on the string we fed it and the extrusion depth we gave it. From there, we have our text node, that spirit of a 3D object. And to that spirit, we're giving it the shape or the body of our text geometry. And from there, we're giving it the position of 0, 0, 0, which is our world center. And then we are adding it to our scene. So, we could do all of these things, but if you don't add it to your scene, it's never going to show up because it never appeared. It just has all these mathematical numbers and shapes and colors, but it was never actually added to the world. So the root node dot add child node is the most important step. You can do all the other things, but if you forget that, it's not going to work. So let's go ahead and run our app. We'll hit run, and we'll come back over, and we'll just give it a second. And look at that. So we have our Shiba, much more manageable size now. He's right here. Hey, buddy. Hey. And there's ways to make this. So you can notice that right now my hand looks like it's behind him. So there's changes to the code that we can make to make it look like it's in front of him or going through him. But that's going to be another lesson. And so somewhere in here, we should see the words. Oh, there you go. There's some words there. They're really, really big. But I think you guys know what they mean, but I got to carry my MacBook with me. My iPhone cord is not quite long enough. So yeah, these words say AR today, but the rotation is a little off. Let's try running our app one more time in a different direction because we don't have enough iPhone cord to look at it from the right direction. 3, 2, 1, and let's see here. Yeah, it's just a really big word. So let's change that just because it's not working quite how we want it to. How about we change the size of this? Well, text node dot scale equals, and let's make it closer to the size of our dog, maybe like the same measurement that we did there, right? So we'll do SCM vector 3, and this time let's do a CG float, doesn't really matter. And I think I still have it pasted perfect. So 0.07, 0.07, 0.07. Sounds much more manageable. And then for our extrusion depth, let's maybe do 0.7. Why not? Let's make it a little bit skinnier so it's a little bit easier to read. So hopefully we can see our text this time, and then we can wrap up our today's session and post the recording. And again, I do thank anyone who's still here. So we're running our app. So this time we have our dog, and look at that. It's still pretty big, but I think you know what it says. It says AR today with the exclamation point. So we did it. We have a happy dog. He has a scarf on, and he has some snow floating around him here in my room too. So that's how you make augmented reality on an iPhone. Obviously this scales out really, really big and can get really complicated. As I mentioned, my apps are 800 lines for the big sky above us, which is public. So you can check that out on my website. And AugmentOS is 8,000 lines. But this app that we created today is only 87 lines of code. So it gets big, it gets complicated, and that's what really makes it fun. So I really hope you guys enjoyed today's session. Thank you for joining. I'm going to just check to see if we have any more questions, and then we can wrap this up. And yeah, there's still some people here. Excellent session, Casey. Thanks. Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it. So I really appreciate it, Chris. Cool. And yeah, that's it for questions today. Well, again, I thank you guys for joining. Definitely check me out on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook, and just find me on the internet. Go to my website, nearfuture.marketing. And if you scroll to the bottom, you can get all of the links that you would need or anything else here. Just go to my website, nearfuture.marketing. Next meetup should be in 2 weeks. I am going on a vacation here soon. I'm not going to open my calendar, but I'm going on a vacation soon. So after that, I should be pretty prime for the next meetup. And I think that vacation is before 2 weeks from now. So we're all fine on that. Everything will be posted here on the website, Augmented Reality Today. Join the meetup. Thank you. I don't have any outro music, so we're just going to wrap it up here. Bye, guys. Thank you. And check out the swag shop. I'm going to be uploading some new stuff there, but this is a cool shirt I designed. Love it. Take care, guys. Enjoy. I'll be posting this on YouTube by the end of the day. Thank you. And let's do it.